It's a public comment number 4.
All right.
For that. This is the Infrastructure Committee meeting November 18th, 2 p.m. The agenda today includes a update from the Director of Public Works, who I don't see here at the moment. Maybe the borough manager wants to give us a report here. Then we're going to talk about, we have a few action items, a solid waste bid, the 2020 operating budget amendments, the easement for the north of Narberth Avenue Bridge, the Narberth Avenue Bridge art, the Narberth Avenue Bridge cost estimating services, and then we have an item for discussion, which is the reason the borough engineer's here to discuss with us the pollution reduction plan. Then we have a public comment. And then there are 3 items that are on the agenda for discussion at the council meeting, which we will not be discussing here. They may come up, and those are the traffic engineering for the Windsor Avenue project, the traffic engineering for Narberth Avenue Bridge, and the 201 Sabine Avenue Planning Services proposal. We may cross into discussing those as we're discussing the operating budget amendments, but we have those are really, to remind us that those will be covered by the full council next Wednesday. So, Mr. Metrick.
Yeah, Ed can't join us today, and we hope that he'll be feeling better soon. But so my brief report is that we have extended an offer of employment that was accepted, and we'll be making an announcement sometime next week with that individual to join our public works crew. So we're very excited about that.
Great.
That's the person who is replacing our retired personnel, Charlie Miller.
Okay. Any other comments before we look at the agenda? Nope. I just have a question. When we get to the item of operating budget amendments, do you have a kind of a list of those for us? Or were you expecting us to raise the questions that we want to discuss?
I don't have a list for you to go over, but I was hopeful if there were some questions that was coming from any of you, we could talk about them.
Okay, so when we get to that item, let's just quickly generate a list of things we want to discuss, make a mini agenda for operating budget amendment questions, and then we'll work through that when we get there. So the first item is the solid waste bid contract that was bid out, and we got bids back, and I think Mr. West is going to walk us through that.
Yeah, great. I'm sorry, our copier decided to crap out on us here, and we are awaiting service. So I have one copy, and if you want to huddle around it, I could pass this around if you would like. I'll have copies for council before Wednesday. We received 4 qualified bidders, one from Charles Blazinski, one from JP Mascaro, one from Advanced Disposal, and one from Republic. Upon review of the bids, it was noted that 2 of the submitted bids did not include disposal costs. The bids were supposed to include both the collection and disposal costs. And so we, through coordinating with the borough solicitor, identified what the projected disposal costs would be per year and added that to those submitted bids. And we are pleased to announce that we have a lowest responsible bidder, and that looks as though it's going to be Republic. And I have all of those numbers for you if you are interested, and I can talk you through the methodology about the disposal costs, rates, and then I could talk you through the Republic bid, what that's going to cost. I also broke that out, what the unit cost would be per quarter, per year, per quarter, per month, per resident, per unit. And really the only decision point that I'm going to need from council is whether or not we want to go through and include the add alternate number 3, which is the annual spring cleanup. That is something that council will need to decide. You can award either the main bid or a main bid with this number 3 add alternate to include the annual spring cleanup. I've got all of those values. I don't know if you want to hear the boring details. I could step through those things, or if you just want to meet with me individually, whatever you would like to do.
Why don't you take us just brief, kind of just give us the overview, the cost rates, the bid,
Okay.
the unit costs, and then tell us what the value of the ad alt is.
Okay.
And if you can, including the in-kind borough, what the borough also offers through in-kind services during the cleanup week. Because I know that it's not just that the service provider that works on their own.
So this would be the hauler doing everything.
Doing everything, okay.
Doing everything.
So you won't require
Correct. And we tried that out this past year. We hired Advanced Disposal to do it, but it still needed some assistance. We've learned a lot in the past 3 years. And so we're confident that we can manage that a lot more effectively. So the awarded bid, or not the awarded bid, the lowest responsible bidder for 2020, the main bid is coming in at $558,960. We are seeing an increase in costs, mostly due to the increased recycling costs. And also we are looking at an increased service. This was, again, a recommendation from staff based upon 3 years' worth of phone calls in the office. We really wanted to up the service level to include weekly brush and yard collection instead of monthly. And it also helps, there's a cost savings there from internal costs as well. Borough staff would oftentimes have to go and collect missed trash, missed brush, leaves, those sorts of things, because we schedule on a weekend. It's really difficult to manage a contractor on the weekend. So this contract also says there's no weekend pickups. It all has to be within Monday through Friday. We're also the increased proposed service to include a weekly bulk pickup. So every resident has one bulk pickup item per week. Doesn't mean you have to throw a bulk item out every week. You just have that option. There's also a cost for additional bulk pickup, and currently we do bulk pickups in-house. That is, we do that in-house per month. The idea behind this is that we truly wanted to get the Borough Public Works staff out of the trash business. So,
just for clarification, before you go on, this gives each resident one bulk item per week.
Per week.
Pickup. And the bulk item would be?
We can define that as something that it can't be put into a container such as a washing machine or a dryer or a big bookcase, something that's bulky that requires special handling.
Without additional fees.
Correct. And residents contact the hauler directly. And that's another key element of this contract. First of all, we have a lot more enforcement with things such as mixing recyclables with trash. We've had some issues this past contract. Explicit fines for each occurrence for missed trash and responsiveness. We really want to get a hauler who is responsive to the borough's needs. So one of the things that we're really looking for is to have a truly interactive representative from the hauler addressing borough residents' needs. So if we break that down annually, that would be, we're averaging about 2,100 total units in the borough, about 1,500 parcels, about 2,100 living units. And annual cost is going to be about $266. So quarterly it's $67, monthly $22. So for 2021, that number goes up to $575,729. Those playing at home can divide that by 2,100 to get the annual, and divide it by 4 to get the quarter, 12 for the month. And then the 2022 bid was for $593,001. And all the bids were pretty close together. It really did come between, Republic and Advanced. Those are the closest. So it's a total 3-year main bid of $1,727,690 for Republic. And then Advanced came in at $1,799,000.
like a cartel. Goodness, they shouldn't come in that close, really, without coordination.
I can't speak to that, but
It's my instinct too.
we had 3 other ad alternates. One was to provide 96-gallon toters to anyone who wanted it, and they will provide one for a fee of $50 for the first year, $55 for the second, and $60 for the third year, up to 3 containers per resident. That's just there's nothing that needs council action on that. That's just an opportunity that they will provide one to any resident who would like one. The other bid, ad alternate, was for the week-long Christmas tree pickup that we would do in-house. All of them except one included that in the main bid, since we're doing a weekly brush pickup. It's part of it. And then Republic has a price for an additional pickup for bulk item of $15 for the first year, $17 for the second, $19 for the third. Again, doesn't require any council action on that one either. That's just their cost if a resident has an additional piece of bulk pickup. Currently, we charge $20, so it's less than what the borough is currently charging.
That's for that weekly bulk pickup? Or
Correct. For an additional.
So you get one for free and then
Yep.
the second one? Okay.
Yep.
And who administers that billing?
The hauler.
Okay.
Yes, direct. It's going to be a direct relationship between residents and hauler. The borough doesn't want to be the middle person in that. Now, granted, the borough wants to know if there are any issues that happen with that process. That's where we would come into play and advocate for residents. Then the other thing that we will need your approval on, council's approval on, is the spring cleanup. I asked for a bid for 3 years, and the 2020 bid was for Republic was $6,382, and then for 2021 it was $65.74. 2022 was $67.71. So it's an additional almost $20,000 over the 3 years just for the spring cleanup.
How does that compare with what we've paid in the past, or how much we've...
Cheaper. Yep. Any questions, details? It's a lot. I mean,
Do you have a sense of how many borough hours this contract will save? Like how many
that's a good
your hours
question.
or
I
public
don't
works?
have that. I could calculate that. I could try.
A rough estimate would be fine. We'll spend a lot of time on it, but it would be good to have a sense of this is going to save 1,000 hours or something. I don't know what the number's going to be.
I could have that.
That's got value.
Absolutely.
Is this bid? Do we have there? You said that some of the bids did not come in with a disposal cost. Did this one come in with a disposal cost? Or
Yes, this was one of them that did come in with a disposal.
So we're not estimated. All right.
Yep.
Can you talk about, or do you want to ask
No,
some
that's my
questions?
question.
Okay, no, I just wanted, if you could just talk about penalties. If the trash hauler leaves trash on the street, they get
Yes.
sloppy with putting things in their truck. Do they
Yes,
come
yes.
back if they forget a resident's trash can? These kinds of
Yes.
items.
Yeah, so the bid document, I could read it. Summarize, the hauler has 4 hours to respond to any reports, and if it's after hours, it's within 4 hours of the office opening it at 8 o'clock. So they have to, it's going to be less than a day that they need to tell us that they've remediated the issue. Penalties, missed collections for residential, it's $50 per unit per missed day. Failure to report, there's a lot of reporting requirements that we need for our recycling grant that we just haven't really been on top of and haven't been getting. If they fail to report, it's $500 for each report not made. Intentionally mixing recyclables with refuse, it's $1,000 per occurrence. Failure to clean up spilled items, $500 per occurrence. Intentionally landfilling recyclables, $2,000 per occurrence. And failure to follow required daily collection schedule, this is not having to do with weather events, those sorts of things. It's $500 per occurrence. That would be we ran out of time, we're out of here.
So residents would call the borough office, and then the borough office would deal with how would the complaint process go?
Yeah, right. We will need some verification, photographic evidence, certainly time, date stamp would be good. That's the role where the borough comes in also. And the contract also calls for a point person, a contract manager from the selected hauler to be that point person for the borough. So anytime anything happens, if the office receives any complaints, any issues, we will be contacting this person and they will be the ones responsible to alleviate it, be representing the hauler.
Do you guys want to make a recommendation as a committee about the alternative, the add-all, or should we just wait and have that discussion with the full council?
The spring cleanup?
The spring cleanup.
It seems like a Narberth tradition.
It is, but I mean, it seems like it, I don't feel like we necessarily.
Let's discuss it in this.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Let's discuss it.
Thanks.
If you have want any more details before Wednesday, please let me know. I'm going to get this document out to everyone, hopefully this afternoon, so you can look over the numbers. Please give me a call, email me, stop by.
Thank you.
January 1st.
January 1st. So the timing is important that council approves this contract on Wednesday, so we need a good month and a half to set up to transition to the new hall.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Yep.
So we're going to change the order of the action item discussion to, we're going to skip over the operating budget amendments and the easement for the Narberth Avenue Bridge and go straight to the Narberth Avenue Bridge art discussion, since Mr. Bressy's entered the room and he can help us with some of those details. Do you want to come up, Todd? Would you come up to the table? Or you want to just do it from there?
I do remember halfway.
Okay, sure. So, shall I preamble this discussion, or do you want to do it? Okay, so the Narberth Avenue Bridge, which we hope the construction will begin, or at least the bidding will begin in 2020, includes interior walls on the roadway side that are panelized out of cast stone, and this is an opportunity for some design element that would be cast into the stone panels. And I guess there's 12 panels on either side on both interior walls that will be cast by a specific contractor, and then hopefully they'll be designed by one of 3 artists that were selected years ago by a committee and by the council to give us final designs. And Mr. Bressy's gone and determined kind of a ballpark estimate for the cost of the casting and the design services. But the design services really vary because we don't know which artists will select. But theoretically, the cost of the cast stone shouldn't vary a lot unless there are like additives or things like that that go into the casting, or there's extra bits. So did I describe that reasonably well? Okay. Can you help us with some of the numbers, like say some ballpark estimates around what the cost of the design part would be, then what the cost of the actual casting would be?
So one thing I'd like to say, if you don't mind, before we start, is a lot of you know me in many capacities, but my job is I'm an art consultant. That's what I do for a living. So that's why I'm working on this for the borough, because that's actually what I do. So we have in the past, we've been working with 3 artists who made proposals way back, and 4 contractors who made proposals for the cast stone work. So I was asked by the borough about 6 weeks ago to see if we could update just what people thought the costs of the project would be after a 3 or 4 year hiatus, really, since we started it, just for informational purposes, really. So Bob is right. There's 12 panels. They're in total about 150 feet long and about 3.5 feet tall, facing the sidewalks, the pedestrian. And so the idea would be to have an artist create a design for those panels. The alternative would be to have the panels be blank, or to let the architect for the bridge, Venturis Scott Brown Associates, usually what they would do is they'll just put like big letters on it, saying Narberth or something like that. So those are the different options to consider. Two of the artists are from Narberth that we've been talking to, and one grew up in Wynwood and lives in Philadelphia now. That artist, by the way, was part of a collaborative and has actually come into quite renown since we first contacted him, and his collaborative has split up, so both he and his collaborative would like to be considered. So we actually potentially have 4 artists. That's what happens. So anyway, so we've asked the artists, so since this is a cast stone project, the steps are the artist creates a design. We would of course vet the design, have community conversations about the design before anything is finalized. The artist turns the design into what's called a positive or a full-scale mock-up. That is used to make a mold, and then the stone is cast from the mold. So those are the steps. There is a way to take the design and just use CAD technology and automated cutting technology to create the molds as well. Some of the artists are familiar with that, some aren't. And there's potentially some cost savings there. So I'm trying to get the artists to give me cost estimates that break these steps down so we can compare. At the end of the day, and the information is still coming in, but at the end of the day, my best sense is that to do 300 feet of these panels, 150 feet on each side, would be about $100,000 to $120,000. Those, some numbers I get don't seem credible to me. They seem too high or too low. That seems to me to be the kind of credible range of cost for all of these steps, for preparing a design, for working with the community on the design, for creating the positives, creating the negatives, casting the stone, delivering it, and then the installation would be part of the general contractor's responsibilities. The cast stone that's created by the artist is about, let's just say, roughly 1/3 of that cost, and the rest of that is artist cost. Maybe 40% is the cast stone, and the rest is the artist cost, because it's very labor-intensive work. The cast stone designed by artists costs about twice as much as the plain cast stone. So if you say, just say to make the math easy, if it's $120,000 and $40,000 is for the cast stone, we'd be paying $20,000 for the cast stone already, in any case, even if it was just plain. And we'd probably pay more if Venturis Scott Brown put text on it. So the delta over what the borough would basically pay might be more like 80 to 100,000, probably closer to 80 in that range. And these are all
$40,000 to have either Venturis Scott Brown or an artist design them.
pretty much, yeah.
Versus just plain flat,
Yeah,
just cast stone
yeah,
veneer.
yeah. And there's ways to get efficiencies, like we're assuming each of the 12 panels is different, but if it's one design that's repeated 12 times, it's a lot cheaper in terms of the mold making. So there could be other efficiencies, but to me, those are the best credible ballpark numbers I can bring you today, based on what I'm hearing from the artists and the different companies that do cast stone.
Is it fair to, thank you for so much for the providing that detail and coming to us with the numbers. Todd, you have a unique expertise. There aren't that many people in the country who do this kind of consulting. So there aren't that many. We're fortunate that you live here. The cast, can we say it this way, that basically to have something on the stone, some image or some writing or something cast into the stone, is going to be $40,000 more than the basic cost of the bridge. Given that the cast stone is part of the it's a construction element of the bridge. In the same way that you build a building and you affix cast stone to the building as the veneer, this is a bridge that has cast stone veneer on the interior wall.
Well, unfortunately, I think it would have to be stated differently.
Okay.
The cost of the cast stone itself would be about $20,000 more. Twice as much, plain $20,000, design $40,000. So the stone itself would be $20,000 more, but then you would also be paying the artist design fees on top of that, which could be $50,000, $65,000.
So if it were,
So it'd be a lot
like
more.
Venturi rounded it, it would be probably $40,000 plus whatever their
They
design
charge for
fees,
the
would
design.
probably be less than artist fees, but we
Yes.
don't know. But we have an estimate of any.
I have no idea.
no
And
good
I
sense
don't
at all.
know. Like, if they did text on the cast stone, what I don't know is how it would actually be fabricated. Like, someone would have to make molds and someone, so
You
there'd be,
assume the fabricating process is the same.
Yeah.
well,
They should-
No?
potentially,
They
I don't
could do
know.
Potentially the
molds.
same.
What's that?
You'd think they could do
Right.
cast molds and text. Right.
The thing is, Venturi can do it, but not all fabricators can do it.
Okay, so
So the artist, the services of the artists are somewhere between $50,000 and $60,000.
More like 50 and 65.
Between $50,000 and
I had one
$65,000.
estimate that was higher than that, but felt like it was an outlier.
And then that also adds 50% to the, or actually it adds 100% to the cost of the stone itself.
Correct.
Okay.
Maybe for the artist, assume the high end.
Well, but,
Okay.
but the net number is about 80,000, you think, between the artist and
Yeah.
Venturi. Okay, that's the key.
That's the key.
Yeah, I think.
Approximately.
Best guess.
Now, there's a question out there, I think Borough Manager Metric is going to look into this as to how much of that may or may not be covered by PennDOT. How much of that might be reimbursable or not. The last time I did a project with this, like PennDOT was like 12 years ago, so I don't assume anything I learned then would be applicable now because the transportation funding laws have changed a lot. Back then, we designated these as what was called specialty items, and maybe you're familiar with this, I don't know. No.
So, well, this is good. I think this is good information, and I don't know that we're going to have a discussion about that at this moment. And I think when we get to budget amendment items, we'll put these numbers into our discussion then. Welcome to stay for that part, but if you have someplace to go, thank you so much
Can you
for
answer your question?
appearing. Any questions for Todd? Michelle? Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? No? Okay. Thank you so much.
Well, okay, I guess I do have one question, I'm sorry. What do you think a community process would look like for doing this, just briefly?
Well, all of the artists have made proposals for their designs. I would like actually to ask the artists to kind of start with a fresh mind and maybe have some sort of workshop where they talk with people. I mean, so two of them are from Narberth and one grew up around here, so it's not like they don't know Narberth, right? And they don't, so fortunately we're starting with people who understand the community. But I think I would like to start with just some sort of open meeting or workshop where the artists can meet with folks and talk about the bridge and gather ideas, maybe test ideas with people, and then come back with a design that they present to the community. I don't really like the idea of designing by community. I think if you want that, you don't need to spend all the money on an artist. But I do think an artist needs to kind of demonstrate that they can listen to people and kind of bring back ideas that are influenced, informed, inspired by what they hear, as well as what they think themselves. So, an artist might think about, in talking to the community, whether a piece is narrative, like as you go across the bridge, does it tell a story, or is it symbolic? Is it symbolic about what? And those are the things they can explore when they're talking to people in Narberth. And then come back with an idea. Kind of, it's funny, when you see it, like, when you see the design, you say, yeah, exactly, that's what people here talk about, then you're right. It's not just something they pull out of their heads. So I think it would be a conversational engagement, essentially.
What will the cost be to have the 3 artists do the engagement and each develop a schematic design so that we can then select
The next level?
the next level, yeah. So that we can then select from among 3 designs. We're not just.
Well,
'Cause
if
obviously-
you wanted to do that, I would also recommend that we also do a little bit more of a kind of technical exploration with them as well. Like, how would they actually do this? Because some can use CAD, others can't. And so I would probably say to do engagement, to do a design, and to do that maybe like $1,500 each or something.
I think that's the number we want to keep in mind for our initial budgeting of this project.
Right.
Yeah.
And that would give us time to kind of figure out, and help them figure out exactly how to do that process. I should also say for anyone who's not been involved in this conversation, the reason we're doing it this way is that putting cast iron panels on a bridge is a very tricky thing. We don't want artists just making the panels themselves and bringing them in and putting them up. They have to meet really rigorous requirements that PennDOT has for the stability of the material. And so using this route ensures that the fabricator will use the construction standards that we need. So we will be getting panels that meet all of the testing, all of the reinforcement, all of the, Pannoni and VSBA wrote the specs for all the cast stone on this bridge, and everything that's done will have to follow those specs. So you're not getting something substandard.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you. So back to our agenda. Why don't we finish all of the, if this works for you, Sean, let's finish all the items and then come to the 2020 operating budget amendment, or skip that one, have our borough engineer go through the pollution reduction plan, and then before public comment, have our discussion about 2020 operating budget. Is that okay with you?
That's fine.
Okay, so follow me. We're gonna leave the discussion of the 2020 operating budget until after Eric's had a chance to walk us through the pollution reduction plan, and we've discussed the easements and the cost estimated services for the bridge. So we'll just have more background. Okay, so Sean and Eric, the bridge, excuse me, the pollution reduction plan.
Okay, there we go.
There we go.
Here's a copy. Thank you.
It's the engineer making bridge.
Yes, that is true. Not particularly.
Yeah, pollution reduction plan.
Okay. All right. So I'm not sure how familiar or not familiar each one of you are. So I guess my idea is I'll just kind of lay out kind of how we got to here, where we are, and then if we have any questions, we can talk about it. So what the borough has ongoing for many years now is their MS4, which is the municipal separate sewer systems permits that govern basic stormwater discharge from the borough. And as part of 2018, which is the newest renewal, every 5 years the permit renews, every municipality was required to create a plan for how they're going to reduce sediment leaving the borough by 10% over the span of a 5-year period. And that can take various forms of how you get there, but effectively you need to demonstrate to DEP that you're reducing sediment. Basically, their intent is to improve the water quality in a regional manner. Now, the original plan, this is a revised version. So the original plan had been submitted to DEP in 2017, along with we did with a bunch of other municipalities, and DEP provided comments back on that original plan. And coming out of those comments, I think DEP and the municipalities were all trying to figure out how this was all going to come together. And we learned a lot of feedback, got a lot of feedback on what it is they're looking for, what they wanted in a plan. And we spent a very extensive amount of time revising. So they have which is the large map
of the drainage areas of municipalities. We spent a long time with DEP going back and forth and revising what water is going where, what has to be regulated, what's not regulated. We finally were able to come to a consensus on that. We then worked over the last better part of a year, been working with the borough staff and to some extent the Environmental Advisory Committee to evaluate areas in the borough that would allow us to implement projects that could be included in the PRP. And the kind of what was guiding that selection process was first and foremost leveraging any new private development that's occurred. So we've been able to, with all those new land developments that have happened, we've been able to leverage those privately funded systems and get some credit. They add up to a few £1,000s out of the 22,000 pounds of sediment we have to produce each year. But it's something, so that was the first. Second is what space is available in the borough to install a project. So the borough owns two larger pieces of property, one being Sabine property, which is outside of the drainage area that's impacted. Because you have the upper part of the borough goes towards the Schuylkill River, which is not part of this plan, and the rest drains down this way towards Cobb Creek ultimately. So the other piece of property you own is this complex here, the municipal complex and the park next door. Once you and then we also evaluate different areas along the rights of way in the borough. If there's any other areas we could come up with. The next thing we look at is what would give us the maximum potential to reduce sediment. And then we also were looking at, can any of these projects also be used towards other goals the borough has? And specifically something like we have Haverford Avenue here. We have this whole stretch of road, which is at the bottom of a drainage area. A lot of water comes to it. It's an extra wide one-way road where people are known to be traveling at a high rate of speed. So what could we do? Is that an opportunity to manage stormwater and also manage traffic calming by narrowing that road? And that's how you end up with that Haverford Avenue project. So this document, what would happen from here is either it goes as is, or if there's any revisions we make to it, now is the time to be doing that. And once we settle on a particular document, we then advertise for public comment for 30 days, and then we would submit it to DEP for their review. Now the document really kind of outlines, it was to demonstrate to DEP what the sediment loading for the borough is, and an outline of how we plan to manage it. It is, I guess the best way to describe it would be a living document in the future, because you're trying to project how everything's going to work out in the future. And you would just have to revise it in the future if it needed it. So I'm sure if you guys have any particular questions we can talk about. But that's just kind of where we are.
I have one, but you guys can go first.
Yeah, I know. We went back and forth about some of these ideas over email. So one of my concerns is that one of the major proposals is for an underground infiltration basin. So a facility under Narberth Park or under the parking lot here in this general area that would filter the water before it enters the water table. Or, I don't know what the technical term is, but it would filter the water somewhat.
Right.
So my concern is that it's very low ground here, and the water table is very close to the surface. Like my example is always, if you dig enough at the sandbox in the park, you will hit water. My daughter, can easily get there, in 20 minutes of digging. She'll hit the water. So everything I'm reading about infiltration basins says that you need a depth, and there needs to be some room for the water, for the system before you hit underground water in order for it to work. And also that this is also a floodplain, a FEMA floodplain, so those combination of factors make it difficult for infiltration architecture to work.
So I was reviewing this with Sean a little bit last week. So when you think of a standard infiltration basin, which is usually it's a rather large, deep pit, and when those facilities are meant to manage two things. One is infiltrators, and the other thing is rate control. So you're actually trying to pull the water in and hold a large volume of it. So these systems, you're not necessarily reducing the rate of stormwater. So in this case, you don't need to be holding a large volume of water. What the system is doing is allowing the water to come in and basically give it a place to capture sediment as it's flowing through. So, you collect the water, let's say from the parking lots and the buildings and the tennis court, the basketball court. You bring it into a system, allow the larger sediment to fall out, and then give it a place where the water can flow across and infiltrate, basically fall into the ground, leaving the sediment there. Now that means you can use, if groundwater is a problem, it allows you to use the system. You guys can take a look at these two. They're essentially low-profile systems that can be used. They're very versatile. So we're talking about potentially only being like 18 inches under the parking lot. So they're not that deep of a system, but they allow you to catch sediment without interfering with potential groundwater. Now, going around, I was just before I was here, I was out walking around looking at different inlets and stuff. I was not seeing that many events of high groundwater around the parking lot area. Now, all that being said, whatever the final form that it would take, we have to, in some way, come up with something that works in the municipal building complex. Or, if nothing else, this is the only piece of property the borough owns of any size. Now, what the final form is will have to be determined. But some version of sediment collection that's taking the water off this parking lot, the office, the library, and the tennis courts, and that could be integrated into work, any renovations that are going to be taking place in the park in the future. So there are options, and there are program systems that can be used.
So 18, all right. Okay. So I'm hopeful that there's 18 inches of clearance underground here. I also had I had a separate issue with the proposal for North Wynwood Avenue. Where are we? Let's see.
So I think I know where you're going with that. Can I ask my question before you do that question? Because then your question will also still make sense. My question has to do with parts of the borough that so for example, Sabine Avenue drains to the gully run on the other side.
Right.
Why does that not accrue to our benefit to do remediation there?
So that is based off, so DEP has made the determination. So these sediment reduction plans are based on a watershed, on the watershed. And they have implemented this sediment reduction program on the Cobb Creek watershed. They have not implemented one on the Schuylkill watershed. So any water flowing that way is not involved, which also means that area of the borough is not counting towards our sediment loading.
Okay. So then, I want to finish my train of thought here. On the North Wynwood Road side, any stormwater we capture there, any sediment that we capture there, will prevent from going into the Cobbs Creek watershed, right? Mm-hmm. Do we get credit for sediment that flows off of, say, Lower Marion Township into our catchment?
So,
does Lower Marion get credit for that?
Fortunately, nobody's getting credit for it. Okay. I'll give you the broader. So these, even though drainage areas are broader than a particular municipal boundary, the plans are all broken down into the municipal boundary. So this is a map. This is the borough, and these are the drainage areas that were identified and DEP has signed off on. And you can see there's a few particular areas in here. There are not many, but they're a little bit in Narberth Park, and then a little bit along the train tracks and the south side of the train tracks that were parsed out, which means we were able to show that that water is flowing directly to the water body without entering the storm sewer system. Therefore,
That's where they're gray.
you're allowed to remove it from your loading because they're not in your system. On this west side of Wynwood Avenue is Lower Marion, and it's mostly all the apartment complex there. That section was parsed out of the Lower Marion map, which then reduced their sediment loading calculation. So they don't have to, it reduced what they have to be doing, but therefore that means if we could go out of the municipal boundary and include drainage areas, but we'd have to add that to the sediment loading calculation, which means we would then have to be dealing with more sediment than currently are.
Got you. So given the gully runs, there is no credit for sediment captured for the gully run. And I gather Lower Marion can't get credit for that either because it's not part of the Commonwealth program. I'm just wondering if there's any kind of a trade we might work out with them, like where we take some of theirs and they take some of ours. They get credit for some of ours, we get credit for some of ours. I mean, do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
almost like a credit swap in some way.
I don't want to, it's a possibility. I don't want to rule it out. So let's see, where's our drainage area? So most of the borough is all coming down to the creek this way.
Sure.
That's what's out, that's out.
Yeah. So not really sure where they would take credit, right?
Right.
Given
So
that
yeah,
the gully run, I was
this
hoping the
works
gully
this way.
run was included. That's why I thought maybe they were getting credit. And that was sort of to Fred's point, which is like we're going to do all this infrastructure improvement on North Wynwood Road, but it doesn't. And we spend a lot of money for it. I think is what you're saying.
My issue is that the cost effectiveness of the
benefits?
the Narberth Park bio-retention swale,
Right.
which is like 15 times as expensive as say the stream restoration project in per sediment per
Right.
dollar. So
Now,
it's
so that, I hear what you're saying. So the reason that's in there is I knew the borough, from what I was told, has a interest in trying to maximize green systems and green infrastructure and green stormwater management into it. So that was in there for one of those components. Now, what was the actual? You're right. That is a small percentage, and it could.
It's so
Yeah, the Wynwood.
Yeah, the bioretention swale on Narberth Park. It's just on the corner.
It basically be the strip. It's that area between
Okay.
Haverford and Windsor, along Wynwood.
And I guess the problem is that it's some of the runoff it's
that
getting
one,
is from
So that
The wrong side.
the problem is it's not. Well, so that's
pounds per year.
right.
Right,
It's a
okay,
small.
it's realistic, right.
It's a green system along the park. It is not that big of a drainage area. Effectively, it's only the road area.
Do I understand we need to account for a total of
22,000 pounds, 22,000 some odd plans a
pounds
year.
per year?
Correct.
So we don't really get to pick and choose between these based on what I'm seeing.
I mean, there could be other projects that are
Well,
possible.
So let's.
Maybe, but based on what's in front of us, it's not like we have
So let me see the total.
huge choices to make right now.
Well, I mean, basically, the issue I have is this is a very small portion, so we wouldn't need to find very much else to make up for this, and it's super expensive. I mean, it's $60,000
So
for this
may I just
little
go back to
project.
my question, which was similar to, I think I understand this better now. I was going to ask you about these gray hatched areas. Okay,
Right.
so they've been taken out of.
They have been
sediment
taken
calculation.
out of the calculation.
Okay.
Correct.
And I ask this only because this area down here
Mm-hmm.
kind of seems like, boy, there's nothing else going on in there. That seems like a great place, the other side of the train tracks. Have we considered whether or not a large project there could make it worth
Well, so.
reabsorbing that into our sediment calculations and end up with sort of a one and done kind of like.
Well, so.
Not that we don't get, it doesn't meet other goals, but I mean, I guess my question is, have you gone down that road?
Right, so the most, first of all, it's privately owned property.
All of
It is.
Oh, okay, so this I didn't even realize, I thought.
Yeah,
I
so
thought
it
was not.
is, this is
So we have to
that,
buy
there's
it
that
first.
house here, and this is where all those woods are.
Right.
Along the curve there. This is all, I think this is the actual train tracks is here.
Yeah.
This is all a piece of property. I think this might be, that's part of this property
Oh, I
back
thought for some
here.
reason that the borough owned a large chunk
No.
of this.
It
Okay,
was
so
listed-
that
in
was
one of
my
our open space reports, it
mistaken.
was listed, but the borough doesn't own it.
That's where I got that from, open space
mistaken.
report, okay.
Right,
I
so
was mistaken.
now let's,
Thank you.
that aside, with
So-
what potentially could happen there is if some agreement or something was ever to happen in the future, or some land purchase or acquisition ever occur, there's the open stream that runs through there,
Yeah.
which has an opportunity for stream bank restoration, which
Right.
is your most effective
Yeah.
per dollar reduction. That's what, if anything was to happen on a piece of property, that's what would happen there.
Right, okay.
When I think there were a group of like first year Penn students who had this notion that like Narberth could take care of all its stormwater management issues by building a big facility over there on the other side of the tunnel.
Right.
And they kind of catch everything there in one grab.
Right,
Yeah, that was sort of the.
It's not in the way of anything, it's just like, oh,
right.
but
Does
there are,
such a
there's some complications.
does that kind of does such a thing exist
We don't know
technically?
Dig up the entire sports complex and.
No, I mean,
yeah,
I'm talking about on the other side.
other side, something-
on the other
I
side of
mean-
the tunnel where there's like kind of like a triangle of land over there.
It's gray hatch.
Yeah, that's that piece of property over there, which
Yeah.
it is, I mean, you'd be dealing
Let's say the
with,
borough owned it.
right,
Yeah.
it'd be stream bank restoration and, so the problem is, how do you get the stormwater there? So you theoretically could build a very large facility there, but how are you getting the water to it?
Well, doesn't it flow through because it's on the Indian Creek?
Well, the creek is running, but
The creek brings it.
you can't you have to divert the creek into.
Okay, so it's really technically not that feasible.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
Just checking.
All right.
That makes sense.
If we're talking about, so again, the Haverford, the Narberth Park bioswale that I have objections to, it's a fairly small amount of reduction. Could we get that through rain barrels or something, can you get credit for installing rain barrels?
So,
I don't know. It's a
all right,
small
yeah,
amount.
so here's,
That's a good question.
you're right, here's what we have to do. There is other ways, if you were to collect small amounts of water across various properties in the borough, yes. Now, what we'd have to do is demonstrate to DEP that we have a plan of how we're going to quantize that and administer a program. Of distributed small systems across private property and have agreements with the property owners that they're going to maintain that as a functioning system on the property. Is it possible? Yes, it just would have to be, you'd have to create the program.
Much like the same way we have a post-construction stormwater management plan and
Right.
inspection program with our land developments. So they're going to put in these facilities that have to be maintained to a certain.
Right, and it's an agreement that's running with the property. So
Correct.
that's those new land developments that are occurring. They're included because they're all going to have an agreement running with the property. Now, as far as talking about the Wynwood Avenue.
May I interject something that might help the conversation? I understand what Fred is saying. Like, on a dollar per pound basis, it doesn't look very good. But keep in mind, we have a known problem with the stormwater systems in that area that we know we're going to do something about that has nothing to do with managing pollutants or being responsible green stewards of the landscape. We have things underground that are leaking that need to be fixed and broken. So the thinking was, we're going to be addressing these things anyway, why don't we, and we should be doing this no matter what we're doing with stormwater. If we're doing anything, it should have some green stormwater infrastructure component to it. So we just brainstormed some ideas about sort of pass-through filtration at the front end of that system and the improvements that we're already going to be doing to fix the problems that are underground. And we might as well take a little bit of credit for it. So we're not, I'm not thrilled about a 60,000 price tag for a 383 pounds per year number. It doesn't look good, but knowing that we have this other situation we have to address, and we might as well try and build something into it to get a little credit for it, was the thinking behind this project being in the plan. Not really going to move the needle a whole lot for us on the PRP scale, but it's something we have to do just to responsibly manage what's going on underground.
Right. Right. And then another item that you could think of is, so we have these land development projects listed in here. If new land development projects continue to happen, which is very likely, then we could also, revising of the plan, would be adding additional private investment to it.
So one of the questions, were you in the middle of a thought, or can I ask my question? How does the sediment get cleared from these shallow systems?
So the same with any infiltration or any type of underground system has a certain amount of maintenance that goes with it. And in the case of an underground system, that usually means you try and filter out as much as you can in the front of it, so on your various inlets. But to clean the actual basin, you essentially flood them with water on one end and have a vacuum truck on the other end, sucking out the sediment-laden water. So you basically just flush it out.
Flush it.
Right. And you do that on a regular interval. And that's collected just like, it's basically the same thing you do with the inlets for, you clean your inlets in the borough or, clear out of the storm pipes.
Stream bank restoration is clearly far and away, overwhelmingly the most effective
Correct.
mechanism but we only have 200 feet
It's the most efficient
that we know of.
one.
Restore.
Much of it's underground.
Right. So collectively, of all that my coworker's did a lot of this work. She did 9 of these plans, and by far Narberth is one of the most challenging as far as, because you have limited publicly owned space, you have limited exposed streams.
What if more of the stream were exposed? I mean, what
if you had more exposed stream, then you'd be able, but the problem, I think the stream runs mostly under the roads or under in
well,
culvert
it's been
properties.
put into culverts. I mean,
Right.
Is it possible to daylight a stream and
If it's possible to daylight a stream, yes.
I mean, is it technically feasible? Is it insane? I mean,
I think it's expensive. That's what it
is it way more expensive than?
Daylighting a stream,
Yeah.
yes, it's going to be expensive.
Is there any, I mean, I know this is not the headwaters of the stream, right? The headwaters are still somewhere in Narberth, aren't they? There's like near Aviva or something there. Is there another
I know
stretch
daylight's
that's open?
It is open
Like
from
to
the top at Price Avenue, the top of Narbrook Park, to the bottom of Narbrook Park.
Yeah.
And then it's exposed on the south side of the bridge. It's in a stone culvert on that property running along the south side, and then it goes back underground.
I mean, anywhere north of
It's
Price.
exposed in select
Anywhere.
basements of like
Yeah.
Hanson
Is there another spot?
Right.
Foxhole Lane. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure.
Just through the park and all that.
Right.
But
Yeah.
it's really at the top of Narberth Park where it first shows up. isn't
That's
it?
where the first place it shows up in the borough is
Okay.
at the top of is that
I
Price
thought I had
Avenue.
another. All right.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I
People
believe it
do
meanders
sketch
all the way up
sites
through
at the side of
here.
it, though.
You know, it's a culvert up here somewhere.
There's also another stream that's been culverted on the south side, if anyone wants to look at old stormwater maps.
So
Runs through-
reduce. Oh, okay.
runs through-
So clearly reducing impervious surface on our properties would help. Is that?
That,
right?
yes.
So we have, there's technologies, I guess there are technologies that you can use on pervious surfaces to create impervious surfaces that we could do.
You can make pervious
in
surface.
future.
Mhm.
We have,
Will they credit that without a similar kind of ongoing maintenance and inspection?
So everything's going to have, so any facility you install is going to have ongoing maintenance.
I think like including creating pervious concrete, pavement or concrete,
Right.
I mean, they all have to be maintained or this to become impervious again.
and if you just create impervious, if you just remove asphalt and have dirt without any technology, does that give you much credit?
Is
You
going
know, a
to,
field, if you just remove
It's used as
asphalt and
not
had a
sediment
field.
that much, right?
right, I mean,
Reduce the baseline.
you can reduce the loading calculation, but just taking a little bit of asphalt and then making it like vegetated growth is not gonna add to, it's not gonna make that big a difference by itself.
I'm thinking of the courts.
Yeah. Well, right, there'd be a good place perhaps for an infiltration basin.
So, I mean, I think that the basin that is contemplated to go under the park would already get all of the runoff from everything around the park area.
Well, that's, so if you kind of,
So changing out some of the park stuff would not really help because we're already getting credit for it by draining it out of the.
I mean, you effectively
Right.
more or less consider your
have to do
facility
somewhere
around the
else.
parking lot and then
Right.
your buildings and your athletic courts.
So it's pulling all of the sediment from that
Already.
area. So
Correct.
changing the amount of sediment coming from those would not really affect the calculation,
Not
given that we're already.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
Okey-dokey. Any more questions for Eric Johnson? I found this very helpful, particularly the discussion of North Windward Road, but also understanding kind of the knot that we're in, the challenge.
And I have to say, you are not the only, every municipality has the same challenge. Every municipality has the same challenge. How do we, what do we do and how do we pay for it? It's everyone has a challenge. And to that end, there's unfortunately not very limited resources. You know, there's potential for a few grant options. It's growing greener grants or maybe H2O or DCNR in connection with like a park rehab, but they were already competitive grants and they're even more competitive now.
So just could you maybe just double check on this thought about a swap of this, you know, the opportunity to maybe swap with Laura Marion,
Okay.
if we can take some credit for some of their drainage off of the Maybrook side, and maybe if they haven't already handled it, and maybe they can take an equal portion from some other part of the borough that we're not. Yeah. Does that make sense to
I'm
you?
assuming that whatever process they use to get the Maybrook area off the books is not usable by us. That like.
So that's, we have that particular piece of property, we had looked at what can we do? Can we take water from there? And the answer was we'd have to re-bring it in to the map.
No, I guess my question is, since that's off the map, can we use whatever got that off the map on our side? You know, presumably it's a similar situation.
Yeah, so I hear you. I'll go back now to talk to my coworker who did a lot of work with pulling this all together and revisit that with her. See if there's anything else.
Anything else? Michelle? No. Matt, Sean, we're good to move on? Thank you so much, Eric.
Yeah, it's getting
I have time, but
We're
that's
gonna
to say.
Good.
So so you have a hard stop at 3:15?
No, even that might be pushing it.
Well, look, the purpose for having budget amendment discussions was so that we could possibly, as a committee, make recommendations to the full council. If we don't get to all of those discussions, we're going to have them with the full council anyway. So, you know, this is correct?
Correct. And kindly put anything that you want to make changes to in an email to myself and Aaron and Cindy, and we'll incorporate that into the list that I will have available for you for Wednesday night.
For Wednesday night. So why don't, let's go to the easement of the Narberth Avenue Bridge discussion and the cost estimating services for Narberth Avenue Bridge, Sean.
Well, the right-of-way acquisition is pretty simple. It's the acquisition of the front, a little sliver of the fronts of 31 and 33 North Narberth Avenue. That's the two properties down from the ballet studio. And the price was agreed upon at the appraised number. I'll share that with the public once it gets approved by council. This is the third piece of property that will move through the transaction. We have 6 to buy. Properties remain in front of the ballet studio, the 198 Elmwood Avenue, and also Borough still needs to purchase property from Amtrak. So those 3 transactions are still in process. The services from VSBA, which did the architectural plans for the bridge, and this is a full set if anyone wants to look at them, were a separate engineering and design agreement, separate from the agreement the borough has with PennDOT. I'm still working with, I have a call tomorrow with our bridge project manager to find out if any of these services are reimbursable. It's not clear to me at this point. I don't even have a signed contract with VSBA in my files for the work that they've already done. I'm sure it's somewhere. The proposal is to provide cost estimating services for all of the cast stone and architectural elements to be placed on the bridge. At a fee not to exceed fee of $3,300 with an average rate of $165 an hour, and any additional services needed through VSBA would be billed at their rate, which is $195 an hour. So we need those cost estimating services to put a number on what it's going to cost, what we think it's going to cost to build the bridge before we put it out to bid, so we can vet those numbers when they come back towards us. So I'll ask council to consider that on Wednesday evening, and I'll have the answer to that question, whether or not it's reimbursable at that time too.
Great, thank you. Why don't hear public comment while you're here? Still, no? You gotta go?
I probably should. Sometimes it's best.
Okay, well, so thank you, while you prepare to leave,
I apologize.
we'll plan to adjourn this meeting soon anyway. We won't do much
Yeah, you
in your
carry on
absence.
without me. I can watch.
So
Thank
at
you,
this
Kim.
time, we will hear public comment. Is there any public comment? If you have a comment, please say your name, your address, and make your statement.
Bob, do
Hawkinson, former Councilman Andy Hawkinson.
Andy Hawkinson, 203 Wayne Avenue. Is it proper at this point to make public comment on items that you haven't reached in the agenda? Or should that wait till the council meeting?
You could do, if you're able to come to the council meeting, sure. If not, you can say them to us.
Well, the context, I think would be better at the council meeting since you haven't gotten, it's a the Sabine Avenue RFP.
Oh, probably best for the full council
Okay.
to hear it then. I'm going to go from the back to the front. Anybody back there?
Yes, I have a comment. Carol Marie Scanlon, 224 Sabine Avenue. I'd like to address the Infrastructure Committee on some concerns that I have as a resident, namely the 201 Sabine property, but additionally the Infrastructure Committee as a general for fiscal responsibility. I feel that there are so many projects on the infrastructure agenda that need to be tackled before we're taking on more projects such as the 201 Sabine. I'm appreciating hearing about the bridge and the plan for the bridge, but I think, and Sean talking about the sewer infrastructure, because the sewer infrastructure, my husband's a plumber, he knows firsthand what a disaster the sewers are. I think financially, the borough doesn't have gobs and gobs of money. And I think spending $80,000 on art for the bridge is not a financially responsible expenditure. I think that money perhaps would be better spent on something like looking into the sewers or the stormwater management, because as we all know, the stormwater management was 10 years ago. We were told that we have to get that taken care of or start to face fines, and now the fines are we're getting to the end of that fine area. I'm really concerned about the 201 Sabine because a couple things with that property. It's a very important asset to our community as it is. And at this time, according to the 2020 budget plan, the 201 Sabine makes $260,000 a year. Well, that is a nice chunk of money that is deferring from our tax dollars, because if we don't have that income, then we are either going to be taxed on that income, or do we have the money, I mean, you're going to tax us out of Narberth, or should the borough fold and join into Lower Merion, which is not something that people want to do. But if the borough is running such a tight budget, right now the budget income and the budget expenses are pretty much level. Do we have a savings account, or do we have a disaster account? Because if something happens and, you know, we have the 100-year flood and we lose our infrastructure here, or we lose what's going on, do we have money to rebuild? You know, not particularly. Sabine, 201 Sabine has had years of deferred maintenance because of the question of Lower Merion owning it and Narberth owning it. Lower Merion didn't want to spend the money. Narberth didn't want to spend the money because we didn't know if Lower Merion was going to take it back. So now the borough is having to deal with that, as we've talked before, the lack of maintenance on the property. So I understand that about $500,000 was borrowed to do the work on that. But if we're having this RFP going on and telling us what this particular person thinks should happen, and we tear down that building, is the lender going to be happy to know that we spent $500,000 and then are going to have the building demolished, or, you know, different renovations dealing with that? The other problem, the other concern I have, and I know my neighbors here do have this concern also, is that's open space. And with all the new buildings that are going on, do we actually really want to get rid of open space? That is a viable park. There is a lot going on that park. Friends of Sabine Park doing a phenomenal effort in getting this park up and running. Ed Harmon's doing a great job with the maintenance of that park, and it looks better than ever. We have more traffic up at that park than we've ever had up at that park, which is quite a tribute to families wanting open space, not just letting it out and letting it deteriorate. Now, that particular property has been a park and a school over 100 years. I have a 1919 map of Narberth, and that shows that the 201 Sabine has been a school since before the 1919. So my question is, why has that property not been given a protection easement, since it has been open space for over 100 years? We as the residents would like to keep it as an open space, and we'd like to have a protection easement on there so it cannot be redeveloped. We don't want to have housing up there. We don't want to have other retail. We want to park there. And that, I think, is important for council and the infrastructure committee to know. How will the zoning be changed to save that area? Because right now there has been zoning change that we can't have taller buildings in other areas of Narberth. We want to make sure that that stays the footprint as it is. We'd like to have zoning protection on that property. We'd like to have actual protection on that property to keep it as a playground, to keep it as open space. The question I'm seeing happening with the infrastructure is there's so many different projects that are going on, and I feel, in my personal feeling, that concentrating on putting bike lanes in Narberth and one-way streets in Narberth is not really serving the majority of the residents of Narberth. There's a pocket of people that certainly will enjoy using bike lanes, but the majority of residents would benefit more from the infrastructure committee doing things like fixing the sewers, making sure we have our stormwater maintenance up and running, keeping our open space running. So those, we think, are more important projects that the committee needs to be working on, rather than a few pet projects that would, while they're nice, I mean, art on the bridge would be nice, but not for $65,000, and you kind of add 20% overruns, you know, something around $80,000 seems like a whole lot of money to be spending on a project when we have so many other really, really important projects to be going. So we'd like value for our dollars with the infrastructure committee, and that's you know, my opinion is fiscal conservativeness. And while some projects would be nice, but right now at this time, until our borough has a nice pocket of money in the bank to fall upon for big projects or other projects, I would like to see focusing on really important things and not spending money on this RFP for Sabine Park, because just like with other things that have happened, other consultants that have happened, nothing has happened with those projects. We've had the Swale project, money was spent on the Swale project, nothing happened there because it was not feasible. We've had the library porch project, sounded great, money was spent there, nothing happened with that. The circle project under the tunnel, how much money was spent on that project on a area of land that we don't even own. We have an interest in, but it's not our land. So I just think we need to pull back, concentrate on a few things, get the bridge going, get the sewers all fixed, get the paving done. After all this, the pipe work that was done and the gas work, the roads aren't paved. So spend our money there rather than on consultants saying, oh, we need to do this and this with this property. That to me is not a good use of our finances.
Thank you,
now,
Carol Marie. I've given you 7 minutes.
Excellent, 7 minutes.
Yeah.
And I just want to mention real quick, there was a
And,
traffic study.
We have council members who
All
have
right,
other
go
things to do. 7 minutes. If you come to council, the council president will give you 3 minutes.
Okay.
I appreciate hearing your comments.
Okay.
And we should chat sometime. I think some of your information is actually a misunderstanding of what the infrastructure committee is doing. The infrastructure committee, for example, does not budget anything. The council budgets. The council sets the budget for the borough, not the infrastructure committee. We don't have that kind of power. We're here to vet issues, discuss issues on behalf of the council. So, but we don't as a committee decide how to spend money for the borough. Not, absolutely not. We also, I think also you have some misunderstanding about what the RFP is for Sabine Avenue. It has nothing to do with whether or not the building stays or goes. It has to do with a kind of a look to see how should the borough spend the money that we're going to spend over the coming 5 to 20 years. So we should talk about that more, because I think some of the information you have is not entirely what kind of in line with actually what we're doing. So I want to help you be more informed about that. Okay.
And that would be a neighborhood-wide discussion.
Absolutely. Yeah. Any other comments? And if you could just not repeat anything Carol Marie said. If you share her view, that's fine. I share some of her view also. Yes.
Yes, 206 Elm Terrace. I have my backyard facing to the building, 201 Sabine, the school building. There is some construction going on currently. Could you briefly tell me what's going on? They're fixing a roof or spraying a
They're
chemical?
replacing the roof on the building.
Okay, that's the
construction.
okay.
Yes.
I just
Is that good? Yeah.
Yeah, because they're spraying a quite heavy chemical, and we are not aware of.
I don't know. I mean, it's just
Yeah,
they're repairing the roof.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know about chemicals.
They sealed the one area, particularly facing to my backyard. And then we are not giving a notice, so I'm doing a yard work.
Okay.
And then all the fumes are coming in, so I'm just wondering.
I will
This
ask.
kind of construction process,
okay.
if it's something hazardous will be used, pretty much they used it, but I like to know the advance notice.
Perhaps the borough manager can respond to you after the meeting or through on the phone or something.
So-
Any other public comment?
No, Cal Marie covered 7 minutes of it.
Okay. Miriam.
Would now be a good time to talk about the
Yeah. Why don't you
budget?
say your name? And
Okay, sure. So my name is Miriam Sheka. I live at 149 Marion Avenue, and I'm a member of the Environmental Advisory Council. And I wanted to share with the Infrastructure Committee, because we did just learn about the budgeting process, and so we wanted to make our recommendation. We've sent it to the members of the Infrastructure Committee, but I wanted to give a little bit of background to our recommendation and clarify a few things. So basically, we're asking for 2 things. One is for the borough to prioritize the installation of electric vehicle EV chargers. And I just wanted to clarify that it's possible, so we asked for up to $5,000 to be set aside for potential costs, but I wanted to clarify that the program which exists at the state level, the PADEP Driving Forward program, they potentially could cover 100% of the costs. We just don't know all the ins and outs, and at the moment they're in kind of a recess where they've closed the application process since November 8th, and then they're reopening it up December 1st, and they may change their, the cap or the percentage that they cover. But our expectation is based on the past program that they would cover 100% of the costs, and we sent the. So it may be that there's an annual cost of like $1,000 to maintain or to pay for software like that, but the $5,000 would be the upper level cost. And I also want to make the argument that EAC recommended that we put that aside because like if you don't build it, they won't come. And so we've seen for ourselves, like with our own family, once we put charging stations in at work, our next car, we got an electric car. So we know that it's like full, very well established that, the more charging stations that exist, the more people are going to be investing in electric cars when they next make a car purchase. The other recommendation that we wanted to make was for $12,000 as a fund. And I would say that we said this fund would be in the budget for climate action planning and implementation. And another way to think about it, I think, is coordination. So this is basically for stuff that our limited borough staff just doesn't have time to do in terms of meeting our resolution for carbon neutrality by 2040. So among the items that we listed in the memo that we sent out are things like streamlining our permitting process for people who want to put solar panels on their roofs. Also, looking through all of our different building codes and seeing which ones could be required that would promote energy efficiency through carrots primarily rather than sticks in terms of incentives. And these are kind of intricacies where someone would be hired. If we have the money, we'd have the opportunity to go in with up to 11 other municipalities in Montgomery County who have also signed on to these, onto this commitment to carbon neutrality by 2040. So we would be able to lower our costs significantly by going in on it with them. We're already in a kind of network where we have multiple call-in nights and meetings to share, ways in which we can all meet our commitments to carbon neutrality by 2040. But we definitely need to hire someone to basically work as staff to work out, to implement this plan that these small municipalities just don't have the staffing to do. So it's a way to kind of combine forces. So, and one of the things, I'm not sure right now at the time, but one of the things that we noticed is that just the budgeting process, because it just happens once a year, opportunities come up, and unless you can jump on it, within a month or two, then you lose those opportunities. And there's some federal programs that come up, for example, the Soul Smart program, and then they run out. And so we're asking, like other boroughs that include, I think, White Marsh, Conshohocken, and Abington, they have set aside money in a fund to contribute towards this shared, you could say, climate coordinator or sustainability coordinator. Thank you. And I have a lot of documents here just kind of giving background on the process and the other municipalities, and I'll just put them on the table and kind of see what all has been happening.
This is the work you've been doing.
Yeah, so some of it, this is just a copy of the memo, and then this is an example of some of the kind of work that a coordinator or part-time person could do for each of the municipalities. This was a letter we wrote a year and a half ago for Soul Smart, but we just don't have the staffing to get started with that program. And then I also just included some documents just to show examples of opportunities that you can get from teaming up with other municipalities and kind of stuff that we could do if we had someone to actually implement it and take charge, someone with expertise and also paid time to do it, together with the volunteers on the EAC and community members.
Are these kinds of things being done by other municipalities currently?
Yeah, so Westchester, they have 6 municipalities that teamed up together, I think including like the town of Westchester, but also some really small ones. And they created like a consortium, which is similar to the Montgomery County Ready for 100 consortium, or group. And what they did was, because they started about a year and a half ago, they put out an RFP and they hired a consulting company called CADMES to write their climate action plans. Because of funding limitations here in Montgomery County, and also because I think there's enough expertise from our the free consulting program that we entered into with ICLEI, that Rob Schleek is just going great guns on right now and putting in a lot of time with that intern. We think that we'll have at least a bare bones climate action plan in the spring, but there'll be quite a bit of filling in, prioritizing what to do when, what's the lowest hanging fruit. And that's kind of where a lot of the other municipalities are, where they may have a piece of it. They know, okay, we want to do a campaign to, tell people about solar panels and incentive programs and help get them, hooked up with, rebate programs and all that kind of stuff. So we know we need to do it, but we don't quite have enough expertise or time to organize the campaign. And that's something that we could do in a shared way. So Westchester, I think they're at the point where they're just about to receive their climate action plan. We're basically saying we're going to kind of take the more budget route, put together a kind of bare bones climate action plan, and then hire someone jointly who can help take the next step of implementation and maybe filling in some of the details, kind of at the next iteration of it.
Well, thank you for that. And we thank the other members of the Environmental Advisory Commission for us. Yeah. Is there anything else we should be discussing right now? And we can hold. Do you want to tackle any of the budget amendment questions? Or is that just a placeholder for things that we're going to bring up?
Yeah. So this one's you've already officially, brought that proposal, sent it, so that's on the agenda to discuss, or it will be on the agenda.
I think the only one that I would say publicly now to add would be so that it would be the preliminary spend for the artists, so that we could see if that's even an option.
The $4,500.
The $4,500.
It would be.
Is that already covered?
We already paid one artist the first install, and so we would owe $2,500.
Okay.
We already paid one artist.
And then I think Mr.
That's good to
Bresky
know.
said for some reason 3 turned into 4.
Or potentially, they're petitioning for it to be 4.
They're petitioning for it to be 4.
There's been a schism.
I don't know that.
Well, that would add $1,000 then.
$1,500. It would add $1,500. He said $1,500 per artist.
Well, he may be. Sean may be better informed.
Okay, maybe that's what he said. Sorry.
Okay. We'll work out the numbers.
Okay. Do you need us to? We'll write an email about that. Please. Okay. All right. Well, then we are adjourned. Thank you.